Good afternoon, everybody. Christina here from Authentic Action Coaching. Hope everybody is doing well. Welcome to this week's How Change Changes You podcast. The guest that I have today, Gina, who I will be introducing or letting her introduce herself, we're going to be talking specifically around burnout in entrepreneurship. This is something when I talk about navigating changes, often the things that I hear is when people go on journeys that require to transition, require growth, require you to maybe push or challenge yourself, that more and more people who I'm speaking to, fellow entrepreneurs, are talking about burnout. Mini burnouts to extreme exhaustion and full burnout. And I think for those listening and interested in this topic, Gina has an inspiring story that is leading her to actually create a whole new kind of success, to work smarter instead of harder. So we're going to be talking today about themes of kind of binning this hustle culture, the toxic belief that you need to work all the hours God sends and put yourself into exhaustion, for more and more balanced approach around how we change the way that we work in order to live a more balanced life, a more fulfilling life, that we want to be able to create meaningful change that is bespoke for us. So as usual, we would love to know your comments. Please do share this story if it resonates. And let's really join in these conversations about change so that we can start to look at them differently. We can start to look at them through an inspiring lens, one of possibility, one of learning from what we've been maybe done in the past, so that we can see a new way of being going forward. So without further ado, Gina, welcome. Please, can you introduce yourself to the lovely people watching?
Hello, so I'm Gina Trick. I am a certified business strategist, but I specialise in client attraction, and I'm specialising even further with using AI in client attraction, so to help you free up some time, stop you feeling overwhelmed from looking at like blank pages, wondering what to put out into the world with your messaging, and basically just to get a little bit of time back, a little bit of headspace back, and still be able to really build the business that you want, but on your own terms and without literally spending every hour at your desk.
So I don't know about you, Gina, but I think we had the internet decide to just drop out in that precise moment you introduced yourself. So apologies for that. It just seemed to get the whirring wheel. So if you would like to go again, sorry.
Hopefully that's not at my end. Yes, so I'm Gina Trick. I'm a certified business strategist, but I specialise in client attraction, and I'm specialising further in using AI in client attraction, just so that it saves your time, sort of headspace, and kind of stop you staring at a blank space, when you're trying to think of things to come up with, and that pressure that it puts on you of posting content constantly. And basically it is just about being able to build a business on your terms with the time that you've got, not spending all those hours kind of tied to your desk, and enjoying what you do as well, and just taking some of the pressure off.
Yeah, great, Gina, fantastic. Because Gina and I met at one of our Together We Rise Up networking events at the end of October. And as soon as, Gina, you shared your story with me and the rest of us that were sitting there, I knew straight away that we had to have this conversation on the podcast, to be able to talk about this hustle culture, talk about kind of giving your all, but for what return or for what sacrifice?
Yeah.
So can we then start a little bit a few years ago? Can you share with us kind of where this kind of story started in terms of your entrepreneurial journey?
So it is. We're going back nearly 20 years, which is quite scary. So I started my first business in 2005, and it was a side hustle in the wedding industry, and had that for a few years. And basically, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I always wanted my own business because I craved kind of the freedom and, that autonomy over my life. And then, so basically ended up sort of going through, I made wedding jewellery and stationery. It went on to having my own accessories boutique, selling different wedding accessories. And then if we fast forward to 2016, I had the opportunity to take over the running of a wedding venue, which had always been my dream. And so we built a wedding and events company and set that up. And when we took over the wedding venue, it was, to say it was dying, it was kind of an understatement. Anybody that knows the wedding industry, you should have bookings 3 and 4 years in advance. And this place literally had 5 bookings on the sheet for that year, and there was nothing else. So I knew it was going to be a huge undertaking to get it off the ground. But I'd always been told, you know, you work hard, you get up early, you go to bed late, you put the hours in, and it'll all come around, and chasing this dream of success. And so I did all of those things. And when we had weddings, because we didn't have accommodation, I'd be in at 6 a.m. in the morning so that the bride could be in to get ready. I would be cleaning up until 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, and we could have a wedding the next day. So therefore, I'd be back doing the same thing the next day. And then on top of when you didn't have weddings, I obviously had show rounds, we had to do marketing, I had staff to look after. I was doing everything. And even as we grew and I took more staff on, the responsibility grew. And so instead of doing less hours, I did more hours, and I hit an average of 90 hours a week, and I wouldn't have a day off. And it just was never stopping. Like every day I have to check the emails. Every day I had to check my phone. Every day I was kind of worrying about things. And anybody that's worked in the wedding industry will know that your couples will also remind you of everything that's coming up. And even if they get married in 2 years' time, to them, it's obviously really important at that moment. So you can't just go, actually, I'll get back to you. They need answers. So I was permanently on the go. I never stopped. I never switched off. To the fact that when we got married, myself and my husband, I did 3 weddings the same week as our wedding. So I didn't even have... Yep. It was crazy. And we actually turned down a wedding the day after the day we got married, and the couple that were turned away had a really big go at us because I said, look, it's the day after my wedding. And they were like, well, what's the problem? And that's how demanding it had got. And it felt really hard for us to say no because we'd worked so hard. And we got to the point where, we were turning over 7 figures. We were booked 3 years in advance. We were turning people away for busy dates and things. So we're doing everything. I had the staff, and one morning I woke up and I couldn't speak. Like I physically, there was things in my head and I just couldn't actually get it out of my mouth. And at first I thought I've had a stroke. I literally was so scared. I didn't know what was going on. It only lasted about 20 minutes. But I was groggy, I was tired, and I was just like, I just felt so unwell. Like I ached from head to toe, and I can't even describe. It's not even like an ache in your joints. It's like inside of you. Yeah. Like brushing my hair hurt. Taking a drink of water, just swallowing hurt. And just everything felt like a massive pressure, and just, things that I should have enjoyed doing, I didn't want to do anymore because it just felt like another thing to do. And I just sat there and cried because everything was just so overwhelming. Yeah. And it was at that moment I was like, there's something wrong here. Yeah. Like I've done everything that people have told me to do. I've got this life, that what people tell you should have. I was driving around in a Range Rover, I had the designer handbags, I had money in the bank. We just had a lovely we managed a 3-week honeymoon, which was another story, but with all the interruptions while we were away. But we've been to Hawaii, dream stuff. And I was like, why am I feeling so unhappy, so lethargic? I'm getting to the point where I don't want to go into work, and this is my business. Like everything just felt so wrong. Yeah. And it was, on top of that, I have a bowel condition anyways that makes me quite poorly at times, and that was really, really bad. Right. And it just literally, I was like, something's got to give here. And it wasn't until I spoke to the doctor that they were like, I think you've got burnout. And I just thought burnout was when people, people just like, oh, I'm so tired, I'm burnt out.
Yeah.
I didn't get until that moment what it actually meant. And the whole implications of it not just being a physical, it being all of these things, like I say, it's your mood as well, it's your mindset, it's just every part of you just feels wrong.
Yeah. But it even just reflecting on that, Gina, and thank you for sharing everything. It sounds like you kind of climbed upon this like almost juggernaut, and then it almost becomes a bit addictive, I can imagine, if you're just you've got that forward motion and that momentum, and then it almost like flew away with you, right? It became so big and demanding.
I think as well, because like it was my dream. I always used to sort of say, oh, I'd love to have my own wedding venue. And I never thought in a million years would get the opportunity to do that.
Yes.
And so then it was like, right, I need to make this work. And then once you start taking staff on, you've got their lives are in your hands. Do you know what I mean? You're responsible for them and for them feeding their families and things. So like it's an extra, whole responsibility. And then it's a case of you always need to have more people on your books because you need to have that forward planning. And running a wedding venue, when people sort of say it's like 7 figures, it's like, yeah, it's great, but it's so expensive to run as well. That's a turnover. You've got huge bills, like astronomical. So like the financial pressure, and it was just like I say, it snowballed. And I never thought, I mean, we went to being like kind of nothing to having like about, I think we had about 60, 70 weddings booked within 6 months. So it was really, really quick. And like I say, I was always told, like I say, work hard, if you want your dream, you've got to go for it and work for it. And it just seemed like all of that kind of pre-programming, you're just told. And so you switch off all the indicators, you switch off to everything that's like screaming at you. And for me, I had all of the indications of burnout well before that, but I just pressed on through it because it was like, when you get told this is normal, it's normal for you to feel tired because you're going for your dreams. It's normal for you to wake up and kind of, feel like you don't want to do it today, but you have to make that decision to just go out there and do it. And so you have all of these books that's out there that you could get told to read. So then it's like pre-programming you that, don't listen to yourself, don't listen to your body, listen to everybody else. Otherwise, you're not going to actually be successful.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's almost that it's the adrenaline that must have been running through your veins, or running you probably for months, years of just being able to go, it's my dream.
Yeah, adrenaline, sugar, and caffeine. I think that was honestly what I lived on for a good year, I would say. My diet was horrendous because you just grab anything that you can as you're running around.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, Gina, that like the signs were there, but obviously the conditioning kind of meant that you just kind of went like, no, I'm pursuing my dream. Like, I haven't got time for that stuff.
Yeah.
Looking back, what were those early signs for you?
Well, I mean, it's things that you could probably put down to other things, but like it was the stopping enjoying things. Like, we used to love going to the cinema to watch films. And we used to love it. And it's not exactly a very energetic thing to do, but yeah, I was just like, oh my God, this just feels like so, getting ready and leaving the house and going, we'll just stay and we'll get a takeaway. It's so much easier. And I was like, I used to love that. Like my friends be like, oh no, do you fancy coming out? Would be like, oh no, I'm far too busy, So I started cutting myself off from people. But then it was also like the tiredness. Like I've never ever been a great sleeper, so I'm used to running on lower amounts of sleep. It's just something, but this was beyond that. Because even when I was asleep, I was dreaming about kind of obviously what was going on. So I was never getting proper rest. And when I woke up, it wasn't just I'm tired. It was that whole body, where it's like, if I don't, like literally, I don't drink tea or coffee, so I drink Pepsi Max. And I was like putting loads of Pepsi Max in. Sometimes I was having full fat Coke because I was like, if I don't get caffeine and sugar. So I was drinking full fat Coke. Then it was like starchy breakfasts. So I was getting like myself, like, like a bacon and sausage butty and eating that because I had to have that in order to have some energy to get us going.
Energy. Yeah.
And I was like, if I don't have that, then I'll never get going. And then it was like I say, it was the aches, like, you know, things, you know, I used to joke about it. I mean, at this point, I was like in my sort of like mid-30s, but I was like, oh, all day just creeping in and like, oh, you know, your knees are achy a bit. And, you know, and oh, well, it's quite a physical job. So that's why I'm aching. But my body, like, just hurt. Like I say, it was like, and it wasn't, you know, just a normal, like, you know, when you've done a workout at the gym and you ache, it was just, it was pain, probably more than an ache. But yeah, I just was like, oh, I'm aching a bit. And then, like I say, I just started shutting myself off from everything. And just really low moods. So, you know, that high things just kept going back down really quickly.
Yeah, because it's almost you're fueling yourself like to get the energy to then do the things. So then it's almost like you're dopamining. So you're kind of mining for the dopamine to kind of go, let's tick off all the things. But then it's almost this very like peak and then the drop off and then the peak and then the drop off. And you just think of how much energy it takes to get up and then drop back down again. That in itself, when you think about living in that way, I guess it makes total sense, right? But when you're in it, it's very hard. That's what I'm hearing as well, because it's like, oh, well, no, but this is to be expected because I'm doing a physical job, but I'm still chasing my dream. And like, this is just going to be what it is. And so it sounds like you were naturally then explaining away these potential symptoms just for, ways that you could kind of go, oh, well, it's just down to many other reasons. It couldn't possibly be my body screaming at me to stop.
You just look for every excuse because you don't. I think half of us knew there was a problem, but the other half was just like, I need to just shut this away and ignore it because otherwise I'm not going to get to carry on doing this. And so I was very much a case of like looking for excuses.
Yeah.
And very much masking things. Like, I don't think I was very open, even with my husband, who was part of the business, and one of my very best friends who worked with us as well. I think I just masked so much from them and just was like, you know, you paint that smile on your face, everything's great. Like you want, because that's the thing as well with success. Everybody's like thinking, oh, well, you know, people were like coming up with us going, oh my God, how did you do this so quickly? And what have you done? And asking my advice. And then, so I'm like, oh yeah, everything's amazing. And, you know, and you just think, oh, if I keep doing that, it'll be the truth. If I keep saying it.
Yeah. Makes total sense in that you're almost creating this persona, this outer persona of like, oh, I've got it all going on, whilst the inside of you is kind of going, excuse me, no. But that's the scary thing within all of this. And I think it just how easy it is to kind of, it's a slippery slope, right? That once it can start, you can very easily get into this vicious cycle, like you say, of kind of being so tired that you rely upon, I guess, sugar, caffeine, starch your breakfast to at least get yourself up to functioning level to then, you know, drive through a day of very demanding work. And then you're doing it all over again. The other symptom that I think maybe people listening might be quite surprised to hear is almost this like loss of joy.
Yeah.
This almost like can't be bothered for the simple things. Right, like you say, like go to the cinema, that's something you used to find joy in. That is actually one of the symptoms that they do talk about in terms of, yes, it can be physical aches and fatigue and tiredness. Irritability is huge, but also this loss of joy of where you just end up kind of really having no capacity to feel any real joy because everything's going into maintaining and building, right? So
you're just so tired. And like I say, you've already got this huge to-do list, which feels like you're climbing a mountain. So then you sort of like with the business, it's like, all right, well, I've got all of this stuff, but I haven't got room for the stuff that I enjoy anymore because this stuff you've been told is more important. Because another thing, it's like put your life on hold while you build the business and then you can enjoy your life. And you're just like, what? So that was also conditioned into me. It's like, oh, I'll do this now because I can enjoy things later. When I've got this built and when I'm successful, I can do this later. And it was all like kind of, you know, it'll wait. And then when I did have the opportunities, like I say, I was just so tired from doing 20 million other things. And I was just like I say, nobody, it's like, I even kind of got out of one of one of my friends' weddings the nighttime do, because I was just like,
yeah,
I'm at other people's weddings all the time. I'm
of
shattered.
course.
I
Yeah.
don't have a wedding that day. I've got tons of paperwork. I should really do that. And you're thinking, like, who does that? Like, who actually decides that that's better?
Yeah.
But in the time, I thought I'd justified it.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think it can take you over, and it can make you start seeing yourself and situations differently. And I think that's where, like you say, to keep that perspective and that grounding as to kind of what's going on. And it sounds like here, life threw you a curveball of, you got maybe so exhausted that then losing that power of speech. When the doctor said to you about, right, it's burnout, can you remember how he kind of described it? Because I know you were saying like, what? No, this can't be right.
Just basically, he was just like, from what you've said and how much you work in, it's like, it's burnout. You need to do less. You need to learn to relax more. And I was just like, well, I've heard of burnout and stuff. And he was just like, literally not really much information, to be honest, apart from, try and relax more, find something like, that's like, I think it was Headspace or something like that, to switch off. And it was just, drink more water and try and fit some exercise in and try and eat a healthy diet. And you're thinking, really, yes, I would love to, but that's yet more stuff. And I actually didn't find it
to do.
It was more kind of, instead of explaining why I'd ended up, it was just kind of, this is what it sounds like, this is what you should do, and telling us basically, like I say, do less work, which you think, well, that's great, but it takes a while before you can get other people in place to do that. But then, look after yourself better. And it's like, well, I would if I could. But yeah, it was, like I say, not really a lot of information, and just very much a case of it was more with us having this bowel condition, was a case of, if you carry on the way you're going, you'll kill yourself. And it was more around that than the kind of, the burnout side of things. And
well, yeah, because I guess it's the psychology behind it of, like, the step back. Because I think when you, and I know I've used the phrase before, I think when you're sat inside the jar, you can't read the label because you're in it, you're fully immersed in it. And so there's no, I guess, observation, no way of kind of going, oh, hold on, so that plus that equals that. And obviously, I mean, God, the beauty of hindsight, right? We all know that you look back and you kind of think, yeah, I just maybe stop. I mean, sleep is such a fundamental part, right, of how we function. If that is then going, and then the food's going and not hydrating and not being able to give yourself time to switch off and just relax and enjoy, then already we're eating away at that foundational level of health on which everything else is built. But I guess it's such a incremental thing, and your eye is not here. It's the next kind of.
And I think every influence I'd had back then was very much a case of, like, it was all about business. Whereas you'll see behind us now, Diary of a CEO sitting up there. But now the amount of people who, like Stephen Bartlett, talk about health being that table that everything else goes on. But going back to 2016, very few people were really talking about that in the business world. It was all the hustle culture. It was all chase your dreams and go after it no matter what. And, give it like Grant Cardone with these 10x everything, and you were just like, there was no positive influence that way. So when you've been conditioned so much, and then, you hear what the doctor says of, like, you need to look after yourself and you need to do this, and you're just like, yeah, you know what I mean? And even after that scared us, it still took us a little while before I decided to sell the business, because I was so scared of telling people I was selling the business because it felt like a failure.
Well, yeah, because everything you've poured yourself into, and then it's almost then admitting to yourself that this isn't sustainable, right? So how much time kind of elapsed then? So you got that, I mean, God, that must have been so scary, waking up and not being able to speak, and then obviously having that news. So were you kind of back into it? What was the journey off the other side?
It was about 6 months until I sold the business, because of that whole thing of, like, I felt like I was a failure because my body wasn't keeping up with us. Instead of thinking, like, I need to do something about this, I need to listen. half of us was very much a case of that was scary and awful, but like, all right, you know what, actually I'm back to, I can talk again, I can carry on, I can push through. So we started talking after that. Me and my husband did start talking about what we could do in an exit plan and things, but I just kept kind of going, no, this is my dream. And it was about 6 months, like I say, until we literally went, this needs to go. It's like, it wasn't, at that point, it wasn't just about my health. I was like going, I was always about freedom, like, and having time freedom and things. And I was like, hang on a second, I've made myself another, well, more than full-time job. It's like, I don't get to choose when I go to work. I don't get to choose what hours I work. I don't get to choose when, you know, I kind of answer my phone or anything, because I've got to be switched on 24/7. And it was a case of knowing about what had happened with the burnout, how unbelievably shattered I was, and the fact that I realised that, wait a minute, this isn't what it was meant to be, and I can't ever imagine it being kind of me being able to switch off from it. That then I was like, this has to change. This is not success. This is basically a one-way ticket to the grave. And I was like, but like you say, I can't lie and say that it was like straight away afterwards. I wish it was, but I still
I think that, yeah, of course, but that just illustrates, like, once it's got its talons in you, that obviously it's not a case of the realization and then like, oh, it's part of the transition, isn't it? Of being able to step further and further back from it and think, hold on, is this what I really want? And it's that, sounds like, with that realization of, hold on, I started all of this because of wanting freedom. And actually the very thing that you're pursuing is kind of almost imprisoning you to the point where you're having to be so responsive to it, you've got no time for yourself.
Yeah. And it was like you say, it was like a prison in that fact, because I didn't have any choices. Like, no matter how awful I felt, it's somebody's wedding day. You have to show up and you have to do your very best, because like, it's not like, you know, when you're doing, so we did some conferences, do you know what I mean? If a conference wasn't as great as you wanted it to be, it wasn't the end of the world because it was a conference, but somebody's wedding day is somebody's wedding day. It's like, you know, you've got to be on top game all the time. So you've got to show up as your best. And obviously that level of pressure also adds into it. And obviously a massive consideration with selling the business as well was all of those couples had booked knowing it was my business and me running it. And obviously that level of pressure kept me going as well, because obviously when you're thinking about it, you know, it was that, apart from I don't want to be a failure, I don't want to let anybody down. It's putting other people in front of you all the time, and their kind of happiness went in front of mine.
Yeah. Which again, and I know we've spoken about this before, I think it's a very much a female trait, more so. And I think when you combine that with being in business, that you end up prioritizing everybody else's needs over your own. And I think, again, we can speak to conditioning about this, of being the good girl, being the one that cares, the one that makes sure everything gets done to keep everybody happy. You know, that underpins, right, exhaustion. Of not being able to prioritize yourself in any area of your life because you're worried. I mean, I think, you know, I speak to people about, you know, having this, carrying almost this guilt of like, you know, the worst feeling ever if they were to let somebody else down. And I think that in itself is a bit of a scary part of what we're now seeing as, hold on, boundaries are required, of the awareness around actually that you can't pour from an empty cup. And this is the result if we try to. So from that point on, after you decide to free yourself, what was the process kind of after that? Because it sounds like, yes, you were making sure that people had their weddings and that it was passed off to somebody else, but what was was there any recovery time? What unfolded after you sold the business?
So yes, I give myself a little bit of time, but I was, in all honesty, licking my wounds, because it was hard, because no matter what, I absolutely loved what I did. You know, it was a massive passion. I loved my couples. I felt like I'd let them down. So it was more licking my wounds rather than actually letting myself heal. So I had a little bit of time that way, and then it was a case of like, what now? What do I do? and I'm not great at sitting still. I am, a natural entrepreneur, as they say. It's like, my brain fires at 100 miles an hour, and I'm a very ideas creative person. So I was thinking, like, what do I do with my life? And I came across a business coach online, just as an advert that popped up on Facebook. And I was like, oh, what's she doing? Got a little bit into that and looked. And then it was a case of like, while I was obviously building the wedding venue, loads of vendors and other people that I knew were sort of like, oh, what did you do? How did you do that? And like, how did you like get to clients? And I was given all of this advice. So then it was a case of like, wait a minute, I know how to build businesses. I know what it takes. Before that, I'd already built obviously a couple of other businesses. I was like, oh, quite like the idea of helping other people in order to build their business, but in the right way. So I started up a coaching business. So that was 2019, and started deciding to coach people. But I kind of say I'm very much 90% carrot and 10% stick, because I don't believe in this whole, like I said, the hustle thing and having to do everything all the time. And I was seeing a very male dominated coaching industry, whereas what I've been fed was very much what I didn't want other people to be fed. I thought you've got to see that there's another way. There's got to be a way we can figure out around this that doesn't involve you working 24/7, and that also doesn't have success as being just one thing. And having this kind of idea behind it of, we can build a business on our terms, work in the hours that we're prepared to work, but build the business around your life, not the other way around.
Yes.
So it kind of came from there, and then it's evolved quite a bit over time, as we all do, as I've learned more, as I think the industry, the online kind of coaching and mentoring industry has changed a lot. And there is a lot more female voices out there, which is brilliant to see. And there is a lot of different ways that have come in. And I just think it's slowly getting there, of the fact of people talking more about this, like you say, like when you think what's 2016, 2017, you're only going back 5-6 years to when anybody really, you saw the online coaches, but you know what I mean? It was just like fitness. It wasn't like, it was never really a like holistic approach.
No.
So now the fact that people are actually not just going, I need to make more money. Like, don't get us wrong. There isn't anybody that comes to us and says they don't want to make some more money.
Of course.
So they want to do it so that they're not sacrificing time with their family. They're not sacrificing their health. They're not like missing out on life. They just want a better life. And I think that it's just such a nicer space to be in now, with all of that kind of factored in. And I think it's really important that people realize that, all this hustle culture, some people will choose that, and that's their choice. That's absolutely fine. But it's just that it's not the only option, and that people need to find their kind of ideal balance, and that they can work that out for themselves, and they don't have to follow what everybody else says. It is down to them. And because everybody's body's different, like some people, like you say, go like 5 hours sleep and they feel refreshed. Other people wake up after 9 hours and just go, oh, no, I still don't. And then when I'm working, a lot of the time it gives me energy, but some people find certain tasks draining. And that's what it's like, finding the balance of what works with you, because obviously different things affect different people in different ways. Are you back?
Yes, I think I think the internet gremlins are out in force today, because it keeps dropping out. Hopefully it will not do any more. But no, I love what you say, Gina, and I think that's specifically something that I think we need to be talking more about, which is this reverse engineering of being able to kind of go, well, hold on, rather than this like one size fits all definition of success of it has to be, having all of these things, and again, very outward success. Actually be able to start with, well, what is meaningful to you? What does, and creating a success that doesn't then involve you hugely sacrificing the things that are important to you. And I think time is that one non-renewable resource, right, that we have. And it's funny to me, and I think, I speak to a lot of other coaches and other business owners that have kind of gone through these, exhaustion periods, and it is always that question around balance and around finding your balance, because as you rightly point out, everybody's, I guess, perceived balance, it's their sweet spot, and their sweet spot energetically might be totally different to somebody else's. So for the people that you work with, then where do you start with them in terms of being able to help them kind of design something around what they're actually wanting and why they're wanting it?
So they're always a little bit surprised, because no matter what they come to us with, I literally say, right, what we're going to do first is we're going to actually look at what you want your life to look at. So like 5 years time, what do you want your life to look at? And they're like, but I've come to you for business advice. I'm like, yeah, but we can't build your business until we know what you want your life to look like. As in a perfect world, how many hours do you want to work? Where do you want to be working? What do you want to be spending your time doing? Like, what actually do you enjoy? What, when you're doing it, what makes you so happy that if you won the lottery, you would still want to turn up and do? If we can find all of those things and we know exactly what we're aiming at, then we can build the business to support that. Because a lot of the people will come and they'll go, oh, well, I know what my niche is and I know what my offers are and I know who I'm selling to. And I'm like, right, that's great. But with that offer, that means you're turning up, twice a week for a couple of hours a week. So if you get 10 clients, that's going to be more hours than you say you've got to work. So it's not scalable. And they're like, or they pick a niche. And I'm like, well, that niche is draining you because you're saying they're not the type of people that you'd love to work with, and that when you do, actually gives you energy. Because if you've got the right clients, you should come off calls and things. Like, I come off calls with my clients absolutely buzzing. Like, I literally am like, oh my God, so excited for them that it actually makes me really, really happy and energized. So it's all about asking those questions and getting that actually very, very clear. Like, what do you actually want? What is success to you? Because to me, I was saying one of my greatest successes is when I take the dog for a walk on a morning and I see everybody sitting on the A1 in a traffic jam commuting. I'm like, whoo, that is success. I'm out walking the dog in nature and you're stuck on in a traffic jam in a car for I used to do an hour each way commute. I was like, I couldn't even imagine that now. And I was like, that to me is success. Being able to choose who I work with, being able to choose what hours I work, having all of that. And that is my version of success over anything else. Whereas if somebody comes to us and goes, well, do you know what? I really do want to make 6 figures because of this, as long as we know the reasons behind it, and it's not just because you've been told to, I've got no problems with that. I'll help people get that. I've had people that come to us and they say, do you know what? I just want to replace my income from my day job so I can work less hours and be at home with my kids and go to their sports days and things, which I always miss. And it's like, absolutely fine. This is why we need to know what you actually want your life to look like and what is, your version. I still love Mulberry handbags. It's one of those things. I'm like, but I'm not going to sacrifice too much for a Mulberry handbag, because it's like, it's a nice perk, but it's not a must-have for us. And it's figuring those things out, like what is your absolute musts compared to what would be nice to have, and what kind of the balance is between it. So that's where we'll always start and have that discussion. And it's actually amazing how many people just don't know this stuff. They've never even thought.
But I think to your point, it is about the fundamentals, isn't it? It's about your getting clarity on, what are you doing this for? Because I think that's why we're so influenced by those around us, and that what everybody values is different. And being able to ask yourself that question primarily of what am I doing this for, as opposed to, oh, well, I'm just doing it because everybody else is doing it. Right. Okay. So there's not just one definition of success. And to your point, it is about, what somebody does where they find their work, where they're lit up by it. So I always kind of refer to people's energetic zone of genius, right? What kind of work are you doing that actually gives you energy, as opposed to takes it away from you? imagine if you could get paid for doing things that actually light you up. It's a win-win. And I guess until you get that clarity, then to your point, how the hell do you know what you're shooting for? So being able to kind of work back from that, so then you can kind of help people design what that looks like.
But I ask people as well, like, what their values are. We'll always work out what your values are, because that underpins things as well. And this is another thing that people kind of go, and like, one of my values is fun, because I'm like, if you're not having fun in your business, what is the point? Like, you've got to enjoy it. You've got to have fun, because if you're not, it also shows to your clients. Whereas if you're turning up and having fun doing what you love, like I was at a business event last week, and so many people went to me going, "Oh my God, you're so passionate about what you do." And I was like, I love that that comes across, that I am passionate, because I know that I'm doing something, because everything I do, if my clients have to be successful in order for me to be successful. And it's the fact that I know that when I'm helping them with their success, I now know that that success is actually making their lives that they really, really want. It's not just chasing this dream, it's actually impacting things in their lives. And, you know, when they come back and say, this has happened, so now I can do this, or, it's like, I've been able to take the kids away on a holiday for the first time in 4 years because I can afford it now. And I've got the time to do it. And when I was there, I didn't have to sit on my phone. I was there with them. And you're like, what an amazing thing to get to do, to help people do that.
Absolutely.
And it seems so simple, but people just don't think about these things until you prompt them. Just to actually think about all these. And I say to people, when I'm saying about what do you want your life to look like, I says, you don't have to look at these big, huge things. I'm on about the simple things in life that you forget, that you don't get anymore, and that you miss, and just those little simple things that bring you happiness. And that is like a massive, massive difference.
Oh, totally. 100%. So when we talk about trying to achieve, then obviously building a business takes effort. We're not saying that it doesn't. But what I'm hearing is it's making very strategic effort in some places. For you specifically, Gina, given where you came from and experiencing the burnout that you did, what are some of your like non-negotiables that help you stay away from burnout and more in the sweet spot of balance, would you say?
So I do time blocking. So it's something that really works for me. I've got a few different techniques that I work with people with ADHD and things where time blocking makes them want to run for the hills. But for me, time blocking works. So I make sure that I have, like, I take the dog on 4 walks a day. So people might think that's mad, but I like to get out, get fresh air, and it really helps me with my clarity and thinking. I make sure I block in meal times. So this is all before I take any customer calls or anything else. Those things are blocked in. My exercise time I block in as well, so that I can make sure that I've got that time available and I'm not using any time that I don't need to, and I don't overrun with like meetings and things.
Oh.
We've definitely got gremlins going on.
We've definitely got internet gremlins. Apologies, Gina. I don't know where the problem is at this end, or not sure. But anyway, sorry, you were saying time blocking.
So so like I say, I make sure that I put the dog walks in, I put meal times in, I put exercise time in, and they are literally blocked in as unmovable things. And then I make my meetings around it. But at the minute, I do roughly 25 hours a week in my business, but I don't take clients on a Monday or a Friday. They're kind of like my time for like working on the business and having that headspace, so that I make sure that I'm not back to back. And then I've also set up, so like in my calendar, when people can book in, because obviously I use like an online calendar, I've got it set so there's always buffers. So I've got buffers either side, so that I'm not going straight from one to the next. So I'm very, very intentional with having that all set in place. And then I also know my maximum amount of clients I can have on my books. So I work that out of like, obviously, which offers I've got and how many hours it takes. To then be looking at, and it's not just how much time it takes physically with the client one-to-one, it's like the admin time around it as well and things. so that I know not to go too mad, because it's very easy to go, oh, well, I've already got my 5 clients for this month and I've got another inquiry now. Oh, I could just take that other one because, you know, an extra couple of grand would be great. But I'm very much a case of no, because not only will it not serve me, but it'll not serve my client either. And obviously I'm very passionate about making sure that they get the best of me as well. So it's having those things in place. And like I say, the time blocking works really, really well, making sure, like for me, like I said, having that time, you know, for meal times and things, because it's very easy when you're busy to forget to eat. I have alarms set on my phone. So literally an alarm goes off on my phone to remind me to go, like whenever it's certain things. So if it's to take the dog for a walk, or if it's to go and make a meal, you know, sometimes when I'm being bad at drinking water, I'll put one on for every half an hour saying drink water.
Yeah.
It's learning those things that, you know, and every time, I mean, nobody's ever perfect. Well, obviously, you know, you slip.
Of course.
But it's noticing when I'm slipping in things and going back to those really, really basic things.
Yeah.
And I have like a list of kind of jobs that I have to do each day, if you know what I mean. So what I need to do to keep my business kind of ticking over.
Yeah.
And those are like my minimum things. And if I get those done in a day and nothing else, I don't beat myself up if I'm having like a low energy day.
Yes.
And then I've got my list of things that obviously other things that I want to do and projects. And I do those on my high energy days. So instead of forcing myself, because when on those low energy days, you're never going to do your best work. So it's pointless, you know, kind of forcing yourself. So on those days, if I'm having a low energy day and I've got my things that I really, really need to do out of the way, I'll go, do you know what? If I want to go and watch Netflix or something, you know, like my guilty pleasure at the minute is Doctors. Don't ask me why. But, you know, I know it's a really bad guilty pleasure, but half an hour of just, you know, go and watch that and then see how I feel. Like, it's having that, you know, knowing that I've got those core activities and my business isn't going to shrivel up and die if I don't then push through. And it's working those out, which is what I do with all of my clients, is we put that into place and sort of say, look, on your worst, like sometimes we'll do it for a week, on your worst week possible, you know, like you've got 2 kids that have blooming come out in chicken pox or a sickness bug or whatever, and you know, you're literally like running around like a lunatic, you know, in the house, you've got very little time. You know, if we've got these minimum things in place, you're not feeling the pressure to do all those other things. And it's not permission to kind of go, oh, well, I'll only do them all the time because otherwise your business is never going to grow. It's that permission to kind of go with how you're feeling and know that you're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. It happens. And when we work it out that way, it takes that bit of pressure off. And what tends to happen then is people kind of go, oh, well, actually, I feel a little bit better because I haven't got that pressure on us. So actually, I feel like I could do a little bit more.
Yeah. No, it's that. I love that so much. I mean, it's music to my ears, because a lot of the people I work with are just not feeding into that foundation, right? And then when the unexpected can happen in life, be that sick child, sick parent, you know, things happening, COVID, you name it, that can be unexpected. And if you aren't fully fueled in yourself, i.e. well rested, having joyful time, nutritionally sound, and yes, like you say, it's knowing that there will be fluctuations. Of course there will be. But I think the more that we prioritize that number one, because the more that you're sharing where you are now, it sounds like it's that contrast from where you've been, because you've felt it. You've felt the sacrifice of success, of that kind of success, which was the hustle, versus, no, actually, I've found a way that isn't this perfect balance all the time. No, it's actually putting things in place that are non-negotiable, that are going to build you up. And so you can actually choose more consciously, more intentionally about where you spend your time doing what. And then you can kind of, like you say, the beauty of that is when you do have an abundance of energy, go for your life. But when you don't, that you're not beating yourself up, because that can be exhausting, can't it? The old berating yourself for not doing what you should be doing.
And that burns your energy as well, sort of spending all that time beating yourself up. But I'm very much in the point of now of trying to prove the point of this hustle culture isn't needed. And I've set myself not a 7-figure goal, but quite a healthy goal. But I need to prove to everybody, myself included, that you can do this on 25 hours a week. And I know that I'm going to hit that probably back end of next year. And at that point, I can kind of go, well, look, with just the help of like, a VA and myself, you can get to that point without having all your life sucked out of you, and live it, and live that kind of style of life and, like I say, embody it. And that's what I'm kind of showing. Like I said, like that new offer, the fact that I was just like, instead of like fixating and putting all these hours into it, I spent 3 hours just creating a Word document because I was like, God, a sales page takes forever. And I was like, oh God, and I started pulling myself apart. Done is better than perfect and getting things out. And we just have to realize that we don't have to do everything to this huge high standard, and we can get it done in less time and less energy, and it's still going to work. It's still going to do what you want it to do. And this perfectionism really holds us back, and that costs us so much energy. So
huge amounts.
So it's things like that I'm doing with my clients as well, of kind of, come on, we'll just bang it out there. And you know what? It's out there. We'll test it. We'll see how it works. And then afterwards, we can have a look. We can analyze it and go, right, if you're going to run it again or whatever the offer is, or if it's an always out there, we can tinker with it later. But for now,
get it out.
And just stop kind of just spending so much energy on, holding yourself back. Because it's very much with me is we're just going to take action. It's imperfect action. We're not going to worry about things. We're not going to kind of waste that time and energy on it. And we move forward, but in a way that feels like aligned and good, and not pushing against how how you want to operate. And that's why it's so important to know what they want their lives to look like, what they want their businesses to look like, what their values are, so we can build it alongside that.
It's built as you fly, isn't it? But making sure that you're fueled along the way, that you're not going to then, crash and burn because you are setting the bar far too high. It's incremental improvements, but being able to be mindful and have somebody supportive who knows what they're doing, who can hold account. And I'm sure at times, Gina, bring them back into line.
This 10% stick comes in. So like I say, I'm very encouraging, and I am like kind of there. Like I do a lot of support through Telegram, so like we'll voice note each other, so it's very personal that way, and I get to know my clients very well. But the great thing is, as you build that rapport, you do know when the stick is needed, and a little bit of like, come on, you're getting in your own way. But I'll always sort of say, like, it's never ever me going, right, why haven't you done this, or what's going on with that? It's a case of, look, I've noticed that you haven't done what you're going to say. What's going on? What's happening? So it is kind of giving them a little bit of a shove, but actually, like, what's going on behind the scenes? Why is it not happening? But I think we all need a little bit of stick now and again, because if there's no incentive, it's kind of that. But I would say, a lot of my time is spent kind of in that support and kind of thing, because we all need that. Just having somebody that understands, it knows what it's like and what it's going through. Because half the time when you speak to your family, if they don't have their own business, you feel like you're just talking a different language, and they're just like nod and smile, and you just and you don't have that. So having that's definitely very important as well.
Yeah, no, it 100% is. Thank you, Gina, for sharing your story and the experience that you're having viscerally. It sounds like you're really walking your talk by kind of going, look, this is working for me. So meeting your clients where they're at, so then you can share the steps to get them in the right direction. For you then, just to kind of, I guess, do a lovely 360 based on our conversation today, when you look back over, 2005 when you started, then the 2016, and then beyond, what has that burnout experience, what did that teach you about yourself? Like, what are the kind of highlights of what it taught you?
Probably, when I think about it, that I was very much probably romanticized about, what success would be, and that I let myself get swept away in an idea and a dream instead of knowing who I was. and what I stood for. And now I'm very comfortable in my own skin. I'm very good at saying what's right and what's wrong for me. I know what I value and I know what to say no to. And very much a case of, because I knew how it felt, it's that I'm never going back to feeling that way again when you realise how good things can be.
Yeah.
And having that perspective. I also think that's come with a bit of age as well, because as you get older, you are a lot more kind of confident as well. So that confidence, but it's one of those, when I kind of say it, people sort of say, oh, well, it's not good. But in some ways, I'm glad I went through the burnout, because otherwise I could have just still been carried on pushing through. And
Yes.
I hate even think where I would have been at. So I look at it happened for a reason.
Yeah.
And the positives of being, like, say, knowing to value the small things, not, it's not about things, it's about experiences, it's about the people that you surround yourself with, it's about how you're spending your time, and very much a case of just being you and being happy to be you and not having to follow all these other people. And, with social media, we're so influenced by things. It's very much, I've learned, like I say, to be me, to do things my way, and to support other people to do it that way as well.
I love it. I love it. Well, we're going to make sure, Gina, that all of your contact details, because I'm sure so many women are going to resonate with your message, of definitely working smarter, not harder. Where can people come find you? We will make sure that all the links are there. But if you want to just tell people anything that you're doing right now, because I know you've just literally completed a course that's going out there. So do you want to just share with people a bit about that?
So I am on LinkedIn, so Gina Trick. I am on Instagram at Gina Trick Strategist. I'm on Facebook, Gina Trick Business Strategist and Mentor. And I am literally just launching a brand new online program for client attraction using AI. So it is about basically how to simplify your client attraction process using AI in an ethical way. So it still sounds like you, but basically you can save so much time within all of your client attraction process. I've trialed it with a few of my one-to-one clients. It's going really well. So I'm looking for a very small group basically to test all of these new ways that we're working with, because AI is constantly changing. But it's really, really working well with my clients, because we're teaching it how to speak like you, how to sound like you. You can create all your social media posts in a couple of hours for a couple of weeks, and we're just getting absolutely amazing results from it. So I have literally just launched that today. So if anybody would be interested in trialing AI in their business, literally it's drop us a DM on one of my socials, or they can email me, which is hello@ginatrick.com. And if they want to have a conversation about it, again, we can jump on a Zoom and have a chat, because I'm all about conversation.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much again, Gina, for sharing your story and those golden nuggets throughout. I know so much of it will have resonated with people watching. As ever, if you do have any comments for Gina, you know where to contact her. Please do feel free, wherever you're watching this, be that on replay or live, drop us a comment, share your takeaways of our conversation. But we look forward to seeing you again on the next How Change Changes You episode. Thanks again, Gina.
Thank you.